Hello there, and welcome to another episode of Cutting Through the Bullshit. I am your host, Dr. Stephanie Snyder, and I am a high performance mentor. Through my unique blend of strategy, mindset, and intuition, I help men and women to cut through the BS in order to create the life and business they desire. So today, we're going to talk about the biggest BS story that I broke through. And this is going to be good. This is a good one. So I am losing my train of thought right now. Let me ensure that this is what I did want to talk about. It's not what I wanted to talk about. We're gonna switch things here real quick, because I wanted to talk about this, and I'm gonna save that for another episode. So we're gonna talk about something else today, and we're gonna talk about the idea of what you don't want is actually going to be a really powerful driver for you. So I know, as a woman, when my husband asks me what I want, usually my answer is, I don't know, right? Like, where do you want to go for dinner? I don't care, right? But then he'll be like, well, do you want to do Mexican? And I'm like, no, I don't really want Mexican. Well, do you want to do Italian? Not really feeling Italian, right? And then after I have narrowed down the fact that I don't want Mexican and I don't want Italian, which, to be honest, those are very rare occasions, it's, like seafood, or it's French, or it's American barbecue, right? Like, whatever it is, there is another option, but I have started to narrow down what I want based off of what I don't want. But sometimes we don't go that far. Sometimes we get stuck on all the things that we don't want, and we don't take it to the next level to see what it is that we actually want. And if you want to create success and don't want to spend your life feeling like a failure, right? You don't want to feel like a failure, so success is the other side of that, right? Then you've got to look and see what's on the flip side of it, right? What's the other side of that coin? Because success and failure are two sides of the same coin. It just depends on what you're looking at. And so this idea of not knowing what you want, my guess is you could tell me what you didn't want, right? I talked about this on the previous episode about clarity, right? Getting clear on what it is that you want. There's that famous scene from The Notebook where Noah and Allie, I remember the name this time, right? And Noah's like, just tell me what you want. And she's like, I don't know, right? Like, she knew what she didn't want, really, right? She didn't want to break his heart. She didn't want to be in a marriage. She knew what she didn't want, but she struggled to articulate what it was that she actually wanted. I see this all the time, but it's not because we don't necessarily know what we want. It's just we haven't gone to that next step, right? So, prime example, okay? When my first was born, right? I knew, even before my babies were born, I knew I didn't want to work full-time outside of the house. I didn't want to give my kids over to somebody else all day, every day, for someone else to raise them. I knew what I didn't want. I didn't want somebody else to raise my kids. And so I went a little bit further and I said, okay, so what can I do? What is it that I really want if I don't want that? Well, I wanted a job with flexibility. Okay, I worked retail for a little bit before I started teaching at the collegiate level. And once I was teaching at the collegiate level, I was working 3.5 days a week. So it wasn't even that bad, right? It was very easy days. It was 2 long days and 2 short days. And that was it. And then when we moved to Sicily, I switched into remote, and I was working online well before it was cool, right? But that's what I wanted, was that flexibility to be at home with my kids as much as possible and not just hand them off to somebody else. That didn't sit well with me. I knew that's not what I wanted. And so because I knew that wasn't what I wanted, I had to find something else that gave me some flexibility, right? But so often we don't take that next step. We just know this isn't what I want. Okay, if this isn't what you want currently, There's another side to that. So let's talk about it, right? Like, if you don't want to work a 9 to 5, there are a million other options out there. But being in a 9 to 5 and simply saying, I don't want to be in a 9 to 5, isn't necessarily keeping your options open for something else. Do you see what I'm saying here? Are you picking up what I'm putting down, right? So by knowing what you don't want, you can actually narrow it down to what you do want. Okay? I know that my husband's current job schedule is not something that I want. So we're opening up our options to something else, right? Opening it up to something else because we know this is not necessarily what we want right now. And so are we open to something else? What's on the flip side of it, right? If you don't want to work for the rest of your life until the day that you die, then you are going to want to have some sort of retirement, right? If you don't want someone else to raise your kids, then you are going to want to find a flexible job or have a spouse or a partner or family member that stays home with your kids. It is the same coin, it's just two different sides of this. And so you've just got to go a little bit deeper. If you don't want Mexican, you probably know that you want Italian, right? It's just taking it a little bit further. But so oftentimes we do get wrapped up and stuck in the fact that this is not what I want, right? I'm picturing my inner child having a little bit of a temper tantrum, stomping her feet, being like, no, this is not what I want. Okay. Well, this is where the adult comes in and says, okay, you don't want this lollipop. Okay, what do you want? I don't know, right? Like the little child just starts to cry, but the adult can be like, okay, you don't want a lollipop. Do you want like an apple, right? My kids are more prone to fruit than they are to candy anyways, right? And so if you don't want that, do you want this? There are a million options out there for us. Don't get overwhelmed by the options. That's an episode for another day, right? But if your inner child is having a little bit of a temper tantrum because you're in a space, you're in a life that it doesn't want, have a conversation about what it is that you do want, right? And listen back to the previous episode where I say it's okay to be unhappy with where you are, right? Like it's all right. Admitting it is a really great place to start to move forward. And so knowing that you don't want to work a 9 to 5, you don't want someone else to raise your kids, you don't want to work until the day that you die, right? Fortunately or unfortunately, our parents tend to be really great examples of the things that we don't want or what we do want, right? Because they're our biggest impact most of the time, right? And so you can say, you know what? I don't want to do that because I watched my mom or my dad struggle with that their whole life. Or I don't want to do that because, I watched this person struggle with it. Or I want that because I saw the freedom that provided. And you can let your parents be that guide. Sometimes it's some of our greatest motivators of saying, you know what? This is what I saw my parents do, and I don't want that for me and my kids. And that's cool. And it's okay. And it will all be what it is, right? If you know what you don't want, take it just a step farther and say, okay, I don't want this, so thereby default, I want that. And get clear about what it is that you want, and then you can begin to make it a reality. It's this indecisiveness and this, lack of clarity that's causing you to just kind of spin and stay stuck with where you are. That's not gonna, you can stay like that, but you're gonna have to change something if you want something to change. So if you feel like you've been spinning and you're stuck and you're like learning the same lessons again and again and again and again and again, it's time to take a step back and reflect. Okay, that thing didn't work. Why didn't it work? because it wasn't what I really wanted. Okay, cool. What is it that you really want? Well, I want this. Okay, cool. Let's try that on for size. Let's see, right? And I say try it on for size because some of us are not as in tune to our intuition as we can be, that sometimes we do have to try these things on before we can know whether it is for us or not. I have a great relationship with my intuition, and I can know most decisions almost instantly. There is a feeling that I get in my body when it's a yes. And I know almost instantly whether that thing is for me or whether it's not for me. And I say almost instantly because sometimes my mind will try to justify it, even though my intuition's like, no, we really don't want that thing. My mind's like, well, it wouldn't be that bad. And my intuition's like, it would be. Pay attention to me, right? Like, then there becomes this internal dialogue, but it's a process of reflection. And if I really can't make that decision, I don't make it right there in that moment. But most of my decisions are pretty instant because I know what a yes and a no feels like in my body. And I'll be honest, sometimes the yeses are the best lessons, even though it didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. Because it was like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And then I realized that thing wasn't the actual thing, but I learned something about it. And that's okay. It's all going to be a process. You move along quicker if you give yourself the time to reflect and you look at it. We're not all going to get it right the first time. Okay? So, when it comes to the things that you don't want, take it a step farther and say, okay, I don't want this, therefore I want that. And then do a little bit of soul searching and figure out why it is that you want that thing. And then that becomes the vision. And that's a story for another day, for sure. So, I'm going to sign off here. I'm going to think about the things that you don't want, because they can be a good barometer. I don't know that that's the right word. A good metric. We're going to use metric. So think about the things that you don't want, because they can be a good metric for the things that you actually want if you just take it that one step further. Most of the world doesn't take it that one step farther. But you're different because you listen to this podcast and you want to get shit done in this lifetime. So once you have the things that you don't want, look at what it is that you actually do want and begin to move towards those. That's another step towards that clarity. So if you need help, if you are struggling with this, you can't seem to see the forest through the trees, you're looking for that breakthrough, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm currently accepting private clients. We work together for 3 to 6 months at a time, and we bust through this stuff. The breakthroughs that my clients have are incredible, and some of them happen within just minutes of our first call, right? I mean, it's just astounding how quickly you can move through when somebody else sees something that you don't see. And then we anchor it back in, we build up that foundation, and you keep moving forward. So if you're looking for this next year, 2025, to be your best year yet, let's lay that foundation now. Let's get that plan going now so that 2025 becomes smooth sailing, right? So I'm sending you so much love. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day. And if you do have any questions, you're interested in private coaching with me, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can find my information on Instagram in the show notes below, or my website, stephaniesnyderphd.com. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day. As always, be you, because the world needs more of you. Bye, love.